Welcome back. Now, I've been asked several times for a large triangle arrangement for the church. That's what I'm going to do today. And you can probably see I've already prepared my foam here on the side, and a large design unfortunately means you have to use a lot of floral foam. So in here I have 2 blocks of floral foam. It's quite heavy, it's quite large. If you've got large flowers and you want to do a large design, then you really do have to have a large piece of foam. So I have 2 blocks and I've cut a small section off the end to fit it into the container, and I've just added more for stability and to stop that foam rocking about. I've added a small section in. That I think is going to be the back of my design. So I'll just cover that with some greenery or some spare flowers. And I've crisscrossed over the top with my floral tape, so that isn't going anywhere. It's nice and secure, and I know there is plenty of room for my choice of flowers. And I'm going to sit that on top of this pastel-y pink sort of coloured container. I think I've probably used this before. I didn't want to fill this with floral foam because it meant I was going to have to use about 4 blocks. By sitting it on the top means I have plenty of room at the side to put my side flowers in, and it's going to help create a bigger shape. And I don't have, well I do have, but I'm going to try and not use too much greenery in this arrangement because I know a lot of you struggle to get it. So instead we're going to see how far we can get without putting any foliage in at all. And I have gladioli. Now, it got very humid yesterday, and you can see the growing tip of the flower has not done well in sort of humid conditions. So I'm going to take the tops off. Now, this bit here is the growing tip. That's the bit that keeps growing when the plant is still in the ground. But when it's kept from the main plant, this top section keeps growing towards the light, and that's why they turn at the top. It's because they're growing away from gravity and towards light. And I'm going to remove them to make them easier for me to work with. It's a really chunky stem, so I've cut it at an angle, and I'm going right, not right towards the back of the foam, about 2/3 to the back of the foam. If you had any greenery, it would go up at the back, but we're going to keep going to see how far we get without any greenery at all. Now, my height for this arrangement needs to be at least twice the width of my container because the width is the widest part. But for church flowers, you might want to go taller again. Remember that you have to sort of upscale your design because the church is going to be a very large building, and it would be no good making a design for the back of the church or the back of a building, whatever it is, that is too small and can't be seen from the front. So what I'm hoping to do is create a design that's symmetrical on both sides. And really, I'm using the length of my gladioli to gauge how wide and how tall my arrangement is going to be. So I haven't thought too much about the size and height of my container, and that's going to pop in at the back because that will give you that depth. And if you're creating a tall arrangement, it's important that there is weight at the back of your arrangement, otherwise it's going to tip forward. A design for a tall raised container, something that's going on the plinth, something that's maybe going on the altar, needs to have good balance at the back to stop it tipping forward. I'm not going to use the greenery, so we're going to get rid of those. And I've really got a very bare basic shape, the bare bones of a triangle arrangement. If you are using wire netting, you're unlikely to get that perfect triangular shape because wire netting isn't designed to create solid geometric shapes like I've got here. My line material, my gladioli, is at the back, and it's in line with my side arms. And you know what I'm going to say? We don't want wings, so we need something to accompany these on the end so it makes a really pleasant arrangement and not a design where the flower's focused in the middle and then you have these arms sticking out the side. And what I'm going to use to create that side movement is some campanula. And the campanula looks just like this. It's a really soft pink. And this time of the year, we're in August here in the UK, you can grow this in the garden. You might be able to get it from a locally grown supplier. What I'm using, everything I've got today has actually come from a supermarket, because I know how important it is for lots of you to be able to get flowers in your local supermarket and not necessarily go on a special trip to a florist shop, or lots of you don't have access to a wholesaler. So the colour of the arrangement is going to be sort of pinks and peaches. I've just chopped that one off because it was a bit heavy on the end. We've got pinks and peaches, and the pink is helping to bring the colours towards the centre. And with some taller pieces of the campanula, I'm going to start filling in these side sections here of my imaginary triangle. So if you think of a line being drawn from the top to the bottom, and I'm going to make this fairly symmetrical. It doesn't have to be perfectly balanced on either side, but I know from feedback from lots of you that you really enjoy the very symmetrical and the very balanced floral designs. So don't panic if you don't have the same combination of flowers to go on either side. You can still make a beautiful arrangement by mismatching the flowers on either side, and I'm hoping that that gives me, I think I've cut that one a little bit too short, so I'm going to choose another one. And it's going to annoy me now because this one doesn't have quite as nice shape as the one on that side of the arrangement. I think I'm going to have to turn it round. Let's turn it round so that I can try and balance the arrangement off on either side. Now you could have used more gladioli there. I've used a combination of the two. And now we need to bring something out at the front so that I have that depth starting and I have that nice outline shape to work with. I don't want it quite as long as that full length. And I'm going to aim that towards the middle. I wasn't quite sure whether I paused because I wasn't quite sure whether I was going to use this one. But I'm going to bring this a little bit towards the front, and then you can see now we've got some depth and the arrangement is starting to fill up quite nicely. And with this little short piece that was on the bottom, I'm going to add that towards the front. Oh, in fact, I've got two of those, so we'll pop that one in there, and I'm going to move this one to over here, and I've got a lovely link of that colour from the campanula from the sides and all the way up to the top. So I'm looking to evenly distribute that colour, that flower shape and the texture. And wow, we've got a really lovely big triangle starting to take place. If you had any more flowers, you could bring some more towards the back. Think about the location that this is going as well. If it's a pedestal and it's going in the middle of the church, you might have to put flowers on the back side of it, because if people are walking down the aisle from the back of the church, they don't want to see all the foam and all your mechanics. The vicar, as we say, wants to have something nice to look at as well. Now the flower I've got for the focal point is a lily, but I'm going to put the lily in right at the very end. It's going to sort of come in this area here, down the middle and towards the front. And the reason I'm not putting it in yet is because the lily has very soft petals and I don't want to damage it as I'm putting in the flowers. So what I'm going to use next, and this is my flower combination in here, isn't that just lovely? Very pastel, really pale muted colours. And in here are spray roses, so I'm going to use those first. And that's what the spray roses look like. These have come from a mixed rose bunch. These have come from Tesco's. It's a rose bouquet. You have the spray roses and all the roses that I'm going to be using in a minute. It might be in other supermarkets here in the UK, but I know I can get it in Tesco, and you can get it in a few different colours. It's got a really vibrant colour combination and this more pastel muted sort of shade. And I'm going to start by really creating symmetry, mirroring the flowers on either side. This is not my favourite way of arranging because I don't like that perfect symmetry on both sides. But if you're a beginner, this is quite an easy one to follow because you fit one in on one side and then you copy it on the opposite side. It's a good one to do if you're a beginner. So the colour is on the top of the arrangement. Now I'm going to bring it down towards the bottom so that that colour of the spray rose is a beautiful sort of champagne-y apricot colour. This is brought down towards the front, and again it's a little bit of a juggling act just to get it so that visually it looks similar on both sides, and a little bit more on that side, and I'm hoping that we've got quite a good shape. Now, because I haven't used any greenery, it's very flat at the back. I do have a few bits and pieces here, but I'm going to see how far I can get without adding any in, and I'm going to hang on to these just to fill in any gaps after I've put those lilies in. So what I'm going to do now is use my rose. So the rose is a more pink tone. It's very, very pastel, very gentle. I'm going to start adding one in the middle and then sort of two either side to create a little bit of a pattern, remembering to leave a gap in the middle for my lilies. If you're new to the channel, then welcome. My name is Sharon. It's lovely for you to have joined us. Stick to the end of the tutorial because there will be close-ups of the design at the end for you to take a look at. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, then please do so, because it really does help the channel grow and it helps other people find us. And if you want to consider donating to the channel to help the channel grow, there is a super thanks option where you can donate a couple of pounds so that you can keep seeing all these amazing free tutorials. So you'll see I've almost placed it on the outside of the arrangement. I've made sure that the rose, the longer rose there, is on the outside, and cut some more to bring them in towards the middle. And because I've used a large piece of floral foam, I'm anticipating that I am going to have to use greenery to fill in the gaps. The issue sometimes with using big pieces of foam, just like I've done today, is that it's really difficult to cover it up at the end. But when you've got big stems like gladioli, lots of roses like I'm using today, you really do need that big piece of foam. And I knew when I started that I didn't have a great deal of greenery. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some medium size heads from the hydrangea, tucked down quite low in that focal point, because that will help cover my foam, and it's going to give me a bigger flower there in that focal point. I don't want to bring them up tall, not in this type of arrangement anyway, because the eye will be drawn to the outside, whereas we should be, in a traditional arrangement, bringing it in towards the middle. But what this will do, it will help cover a big piece of foam, and it's going to help give me that dominant section that is important in all types of floral design. You need that one or two areas, usually one in a traditional arrangement, just to draw your eye in and give it a bit of a resting place. And that's where we're up to at the moment. I've got some blue eryngiums, a very pale blue thistle. The colours work so well together. I love peach and blue. Now the pale blue probably doesn't pick up very well on the camera because it's a soft colour and it's a receding colour, so it almost disappears. But close up where I'm looking at it from, it does look fantastic against the pale peaches and the pinks. And I've got a flower that I've probably not used very much of on the channel, and this is a Sweet William, but it's a really unusual spray variety. It's much bigger than the normal Sweet William. Sometimes the Sweet William can be quite heavy, and again, this is from a supermarket. This is from a different type of mixed bunch that came with that blue thistle. And we're going to get those in either side, and I've got one more that can pop towards the front. If I keep turning this around, you can see there's a huge amount of foam still to be covered, but the only flower that I've got left is the lily, which is going to come more towards the focal point. So I am going to have to use some greenery, and this is a fairly substantial design. It's, you know, it's a big arrangement to go in the church. So if you are adding greenery in here, think about using a bigger leaf. I'm going to be using a fatsia in a minute, and some eucalyptus just to fill in down close. But something like a laurel, you could have cordyline or phormium leaves in there at the back, but it almost looks like there's no depth to it. It's almost like you can see right the way through it, and that's because I don't have any contrast in foliage in there to give it some sort of oomph, give it some body and some weight. So when I do add that in, the dimensions are really going to change quite dramatically, but I'm going to add that lily in first. Now, the tendency with beginners flower arranging is to put the bigger flower up at the height. People tend to buy lilies and they put them up here, they spread them out at the top. And what you need to do with a big flower is bring it here into the focal point. Try not to put your big flowers up at the top because it makes the dominant part of the arrangement high, whereas you need to bring it towards the middle to strengthen the focal point. So I'm going to cut these down a little bit shorter, and these are going to tuck in really nicely in the middle. And you might have noticed I've removed the pollen. So I've just used my finger and thumb just to pull out the pollen there in the centre, because there's nothing worse than your lilies being stained by really dirty pollen. And I've just noticed that I have two different varieties of lilies. One has that little sort of tiger lily mark, those little freckles on the middle. The other ones don't. So two slightly different varieties, and that sometimes is the problem with, if it's a problem, with buying supermarket flowers, is that they're not always the same flowers in the individual bunches. Sometimes it's difficult to match up colours, match up varieties. But what that's done is it's now created that dominant section 2/3 of the way down, and it creates what we call a focal point. And if you're not sure about the elements and principles of design, they're the sort of rules that we use for floral design, then you'll find that over on my website, which is sharondower.com, there are a few downloadable handouts that you can buy that explain the elements and principles of design. And I also have an ebook over on Amazon, and you can download that to your computer or your phone, and you can read it at your own leisure. There's lots of explanations and photos so that I explain how all these elements and principles work. And that's all my flowers in the design. There's nothing else left that I can use. We can still see foam from the sides, and we can definitely still see foam from the back. And one thing that's important with any type of floral design, but particularly those that are going in difficult positions or areas that are difficult to attend, so they might be up high or they might be behind something, it's always important to have an area where you can add water so that the foam doesn't dry out. And mine is quite easy because we can add water in here at the back. So if you want flowers to last for a long time, I know I haven't done it today, if you want flowers to last for a long time and you want the foam to stay hydrated, it's worth filling your container with foam and then keeping it topped up with fresh water, because you know then your foam isn't going to dry out. The overall feeling for this arrangement is quite gentle, it's quite feminine in a way, and very soft, light and airy. And what I don't want to do now is to add in these great big leaves. Let's pop one in for you to see. I don't want to add in these great big leaves into the middle of the arrangement because it's going to be really out of scale with all the other flowers that I've got. And what you also don't want to do is to fill in with these great big leaves at the back, because it doesn't suit the style and size of the flowers that you've already used. If you've got big leaves like this, then they're fine to use at the back. This will help cover the foam, and it'll neaten off the back. You know, I probably only need 3 leaves here at the back, maybe 4, just to neaten off the back of the design. But we don't want to place anything that's large and out of scale at the front, because it is really going to spoil that overall feeling that you've created. You could possibly go in the front with another set of flowers, but I'm just going to use some foliage. And I'm going to use some of the smaller fatsia, so that's far more in keeping with the style of arrangement that I've created. And I'm going to tuck these really low, again sitting on top of the foam. And this was one of the reasons that you quite often see me putting greenery in sort of 3/4 of the way through the arrangement, because what I'm at risk of doing now is damaging the flowers as I'm forcing some greenery into the base. And I really need to protect those petals on the lily because they are really quite delicate. And already with just those leaves low down at the back and those leaves tucked in close to the foam, I've now created some depth, and there's almost like a background to those soft flowers. And then I'm going to add in a small amount of eucalyptus, which really suits these flowers because it's small and delicate. It's very soft, it's not too strong alongside my dainty flowers. And then a few down close to the foam so that I'm linking everything together. A fairly nice tall piece here, which will just come up there in the middle, will help give me a bit of even distribution of the colour. And I'm going to spin it round now, make sure that all the gaps are completely hidden and we can't see any floral foam. And that's this arrangement finished. I hope you think that's as fantastic as I do. A really large triangle arrangement for the back of the church. Don't forget to stay to the end so that you can see close-ups of the design, and I look forward as ever to seeing you for the next video. Thanks for watching and goodbye for now.